Aloha, everyone. Today, I thought I'd talk about movie studios. I'm not sure how many of your average moviegoer really pays attention to what movie studios are making the movies that they go out to see. Me, I find that like certain movie studios seem to have their own identity. Which comes through in the kind of movies that they, not necessarily in every movie they do, but in the kind of movies that they decide to make their tentpole movies every year. That there's a certain flavor to certain studios' movies. Not necessarily with every studio. I'd be hard pressed to tell you what defines a Sony Pictures movie, but some of them I think. They do a really good job of managing their branding and their legacy to create a kind of identity for themselves. Disney would be like the master at that, and I want to do another video perhaps another time talking about Disney. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge Disney fan. But today I thought I would try a different approach. I thought I would look at one of their competitors that also does a good job managing their branding and legacy, one that seems to be having kind of a push in that direction this year, which is Universal Pictures. Universal, they've had a few movies coming out which I think are kind of quintessentially Universal movies. They had Kong Skull Island out earlier this year. They have The Mummy, which is supposed to be the first of their new Dark Universe. And they have coming out now the latest of their very popular animated franchise, the Despicable Me franchise. And I thought that it's kind of interesting to look at, movies and like say, yeah, that feels like a Universal movie to me. If you go look at an old Universal movie, Jaws, feels like a Universal movie. And I think that what to me defines a Universal movie, it feels larger than life. That's kind of the gist. I mean, they make all the different kinds of movies, because every studio has to be diverse. But there's certain common threads that seem to pervade, in very very light touch, but it does give a certain flavor, like a little seasoning. To movies that identify them as Universal movies. And I think that, Universal probably does this somewhat deliberately, if not very deliberately. And I think they look at their legacy, where they came from. And, of course, like the biggest legacy they probably have are the Universal monsters. Because that's kind of when they first developed their own niche, is in the 1930s when Dracula and Frankenstein started to come out, and the first Universal Monsters cinematic universe happened, and that was not the first time that they had delved into horror. They had also made a name for themselves in the silent era with Lon Chaney Sr., with films like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Phantom of the Opera. And then, later on in the 30s and into the 40s, with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney Jr. And you think about it, that those movies, they kind of define Universal. They also kind of define our Halloweens, every year, don't they? I mean, when you have a generic vampire costume, it looks like Bela Lugosi's costume. You have a generic Frankenstein costume, it's that green, flat-headed, makeup effect they came up with for Boris Karloff, and that all comes from Universal. So they kind of developed a niche as the monster movie studio. They also, one of the things they did do is, I believe they were the first movie studio to open their studio up to the public for tours, which kind of leads into the theme park business that they have going on now, which is another important aspect of their legacy, I think. And then they They also, with Jaws, kind of invented the blockbuster, because Jaws is often credited with being the first blockbuster movie. And like everything just seems to be getting, more larger than life as they go along. And you can see the DNA in there, because Jaws is a movie about, it's a shark, it's an animal that does exist in real life, but they imagine it being like kind of a monster-sized shark, not like Sci-Fi Channel level Sharknado, like Mega Shark level things, but it's it just a little bit too big for a great white shark. That was the premise of Jaws, I think, and that was the first time I think the phrase blockbuster was coined for Jaws, because it was the first time audiences were lining up around the block to see a movie. And so they start making more of these blockbuster films like E.T. and Back to the Future. And still, you can see a little bit of that monster DNA in there, because E.T. is this strange-looking little creature. He's kind of like a monster, but a friendly monster. And in Back to the Future, well, the whole thing is all about the invention of a mad scientist. So, they're kind of branching out and kind of doing less horror, more, blockbuster things, but it's, the DNA is there, the feel, the little seasoning, what I was talking about, is there. And then, of course, Jurassic Park comes along, which is, fits right in to that. And even, one of their more recent hits, Despicable Me, a big part of the marketing, definitely, but, a big part of the appeal, I think, to little kids, at least, were these side characters, the Minions, who are, I don't know, they're some strange little creature. I guess you could call them monsters of some sort. So, yeah, that feel is there. And I'm not sure if you know this, but the Hulk, the movie rights for the Hulk, even though they have a deal in which they're allowed to use the Hulk in other superheroes movies, Universal holds those rights, because before Marvel created their own studio, they sold the rights to many of their characters. That's why Sony and Fox have Spider-Man and the X-Men and Fantastic Four. But Universal got the Hulk, and the Hulk it's perfect for Universal, for the feel of Universal. It's in fact, I think Stan Lee, when creating the Hulk, was influenced by, kind of in part, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and kind of in part Frankenstein. So, it comes full circle, doesn't it? The Hulk being influenced by Universal monsters, and then sort of becoming a Universal monster in a sense, but still being part of the MCU. The only solo Incredible Hulk film that is part of the MCU is actually a Universal film. If you look at the logo on it, it's Universal, not Marvel Studios is like a secondary logo on it. Yeah, I think that it's very interesting to see that they're embracing their legacy, and especially with the new version of the Universal Monsters cinematic universe, what they're calling the Dark Universe now. From what I hear, The Mummy did not do too well, but it seems like it's not deterring them. They're still going to go forward with this universe. I have not had a chance to see The Mummy, and I probably am not going to until it's available at home. In fact, all of these Universal movies we're talking about from this year, I have not had a chance to see, and I'm planning to see when I can see them at home. Kong Skull Island, and I'm probably not going to go out to see Despicable Me 3, but I'll watch it eventually. And I think it's really interesting if you pay attention and you look to it. Even thinking back to the 90s when they did the adaptations of the Flintstones in live action, that was dinosaurs and its comedic kind of take on it. It's very larger than life. It's all this, everything's bigger in Texas. Well, everything's bigger in Universal as well. It's just this sort of little shot of monster DNA into everything. And I'd like to give some thought to the other movie studios like Disney or Warner Brothers, maybe Paramount. I'm not sure if Paramount kind of has a real identity of its own. I'm going to have to think about that. I'm not sure if it's ever really hit me. But I'd like to take a look at these studios and just what makes a movie feel like it fits that studio. I think that's an interesting thing to do, and maybe I'll do more videos kind of like this one. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and